Inbound Flops, welcome back to the channel. I'm Zach, not Kyle, or Zach for short, and today, on this day, we're going to be continuing my video series, The Ballad of Mortal Kombat 11. This series is here, as always, to go over why Mortal Kombat 11 is a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to its diehard fans, and what it did wrong as a video game and franchise. So today is specifically going to be about the launch day, and all of the shenanigans and patches that came with it, along with going over what the bar was for MK11 to even cross in comparison to its predecessor, Mortal Kombat 10. And real quick, just want to leave a couple disclaimers here. So the first is that if you have not seen part 1 of this video, I am going to drop a title card right above, and then you can go watch that. Make sure to watch that first before coming back, because it's going to have a lot of references to that video and characters mentioned in it. This is going to be a 7-part series in the end, so make sure to watch this one so you get the context for all the future ones if you're watching this in the future. So all of my sources are going to be listed below when I cite them, so just sit back, maybe grab some tea, some iced coffee if it's early enough for you, eat a snack, and just sit back, enjoy the video, and let's talk about more fighting game shenanigans. So when April 23rd finally came around, the disappointment was a bit baffling. There was a lot to be desired here, and the game was deemed way too hard by fans, which resulted in the NetherRealm Studios team to launch an emergency combat cast about the game's issues. And once again, watch part 1 if you haven't, but the combat cast was not the best when it came to running a podcast for video games, but you know you've definitely fucked up when you have to launch an emergency podcast because of how bad you oofed on this one. So real quick, I do want to touch on what MKX, the predecessor, did right and wrong so we have a basis of what MK11's goals were here. So the pros were that MKX provided a new story and a massive expansion to the universe that was trying to be revamped after the 3D era and MK9's reset of the timeline. Many fans believed that this was a good starting point for this new era. MKX also had a massive graphic update from MK9, as well as new mechanics like a QuickTime interactive story mode, tons of new maps, interactive pieces, and more interspersed in the game, along with about a year or two of additional content that filtered through as time went on. However, looking at the cons of that game, there's quite a few things that stick out here. The first was just how bad the roster discourse was. I don't even think it was this bad for MK11, which had quite a few issues that won't be touched on until further on in this series, but characters that played massive importance in the timeline were nowhere to be found, including Sindel, Shao Kahn, Jade, Smoke, Cyrax, Sector, and so many more. There was also the variations causing the devs to make excuses that they had more characters than they actually saw, when it would have been smarter to make less variations and answer the fan demands from both a rating and a monetary standpoint. The story was also criticized for the power imbalances favoring D'Vorah and Johnny Cage specifically, which seemed to go on and off throughout the story, along with the retconning of new characters into the story and the 25-year split in the timeline where we don't get enough insight on what happened in that point, apart from a few cutaway scenes which did give us some new skins. And going back on that story mode point I made in the pro section, I will say that many people also did have an issue with MKX's story due to how focused it was on the new school characters. So, did Mortal Kombat 11 fix these? Yes and no, kind of ish if you want to count it that way, because they did fix some of their issues, that is undeniable, but in doing so they did create a couple more problems. For starters, they fixed the roster discourse to a certain degree. Fighting games will forever be plagued by things like this, since that is just how fan bases work when it comes to large roster universes like Tekken, Killer Instinct, Mortal Kombat, etc. There were less new characters this time, with only a few joining the roster, being Cetrion, Collector, Garrus, and Kronika playing as an NPC, but we will talk about her. The variations were modified to have only 2 variations and now have custom variations to play with. The power imbalances on Johnny Cage and D'Vorah were handled and given to the right powers, but the correct power balances were more so happening in MK11 Aftermath, which is going to be part 4 of this series. The character retconning was less bad this time, although the timeline fuckery with Kronika was still weird as hell, but we will get there. So what went wrong with these criteria? So the timeline got fucked up really badly because so many characters had to be thrown into the pit of this game, including making Aaron Black, Collector, Cetrion, Kronika, Rain, and a bunch of other characters make sense in both MK9 and MKX, on top of making sense in this timeline merge from MK11, when some of these characters did not exist in the main lore yet, or were not present in one of these games at least, despite being a character. There were also a lot of complaints about the change in style from MKX to MK11, with many calling it cartoony or cheesy, but this change was definitely necessary since MKX was seen as one of the most violent pieces of media to be produced in history. Debauchery at the time. Now let's go on to the issues that MK11 caused. So for starters, there was outcry from fans over the in-game currency, time crystals. Not only are they hard to grind for in the game, along with every single other currency, but they also cost a lot of money to get various skins, accessories, brutalities, etc. In fact, every single piece of currency was ridiculously hard to get on the same level, except they weren't purchasable. Referring back to our source, Destructoid, regarding the in-game store, it was stated that there was nothing available in the store to speed up the grind process, and there never will be. Only cosmetic items. Finally, it was announced that every MK11 player will receive a free currency pack containing 500,000 coins, 500 hearts, 1,000 soul fragments, and 1,000 time crystals. I'm assuming these will arrive alongside the Towers of Time patch, which will arrive this week or at the very latest, the start of next week. So yes, NRS did attempt to fix this very early, but it left a sour taste in the mouths of many launch players. And as someone who was a 14-year-old child who definitely should not have been playing this game, I can definitely say I was quite frustrated when I was playing Jade in the Towers, and it was just going insanely wrong. The crypt was facing backlash due to how it is randomly generated for every player. No two crypt environments were the same other than a certain group of chests. Once again, turning to the source, if every single player's crypts have chests in entirely different locations, it's not strictly random, but it still means you don't know where anything is, and as such will forever have to spend your hard grinded currency at random. And while that has always been the way in the crypt in MK past, it didn't take this long to earn that moolah. Special chests such as the pricey Scorpion and Shao Kahn chests fortunately contain the same contents in all the crypts, so I guess hone in on those or wait for a written guide. It was also noted that the crypt contains further secrets and mysteries, but this was not ventured into for the sake of spoilers. The Towers of Time were definitely one of the most egregious examples of riggery, buffoonery, and straight up tomfoolery. For anyone who doesn't know, the Towers of Time are basically the online towers that you can play that get updated hourly, daily, or even weekly, or sometimes longer. The bosses in said towers were so hard that even the solo bosses with no tag team assistance proved insanely difficult. To quote Destructoid one more time, the hosts admitted that they thought the Towers of Time fights were too high, stating that they have already applied a hotfix to reduce boss health. Developers are also currently working on a patch which will make unblockable modifiers such as missiles and other such hazards blockable and less frequent, as well as increasing currency rewards, though no amounts were specified. Referring to the combat cast, Tyler Lansdowne from NRS said that the game was never designed to drive people towards in-game purchases. I can half believe this, so let me explain that. If this was not intentional, you wouldn't have put it in the game with other RNG factors. You don't accidentally spend years coding RNG side games in your existing fighting game, especially not with your currency rates at launch being so low. You had to give out a currency pack out of fear that players would turn away from the game. This should have been addressed when Injustice 2 had the backlash with their loot problems, not here. By the way, if you want a video on Injustice, let me know, because I might do it. Now, on the flip side though, I can understand where they're coming from in saying that they didn't intend it to be that way. I can definitely imagine that. And the grind for time crystals was so bad that they probably either never bothered to test that system, or they did want to drive people towards in-game purchases. Plot twist, I feel like it might have been both. The system wasn't in the closed beta, and most people would have to buy time crystals to use them properly, even to this day, although it's certainly less bad now. Talking about the closed beta in relation to this, I don't think the crypt was anywhere near finished before launch, so testing that was impossible. This was confirmed in a Variety article by an anonymous developer who said that the game was around 3 months behind schedule in January when the reveal event happened. So basically, they were where they were supposed to be at in October when they were unveiling the first quarter of the roster. The new patch did fix the game quite a bit, and things were corrected on NRS's end, but the broken release state illustrates how bad they were with this initial release. On May 1st, the patch was rolled out for the console renditions of the game, while the edits were made on May 9th for PC and Switch players. Now, some may ask, how did they release this so fast? And to that I say, no one really knows. Well, at least we didn't at first. Around this time, some very scary allegations were coming out from old contractors of NetherRealm Studios that would soon expose their cruel methods that unfortunately are not exclusive to NRS themselves. And after reading these, it took 2 days for my jaw to come off the floor. But that will be for part 3. Yeah, remember when I said it would be in part 2? That script was long enough to be its own video. So yeah, stay tuned for that. It's gonna get extremely chaotic, and I will warn you, it is extremely yikes, is all I can really say about it. But until then, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on this part of the Ballad of Mortal Kombat 11. Make sure to watch part 1 again if you haven't, or just again in general. Make sure to follow me over on Instagram to keep up with me at ZachNotKyle, where I post pretty frequently, or on Twitter, where I post like once in a blue moon at ZachNotKyle Inc. And until then, I will see you in the next one. Bye, sis.